Hi everyone, my name is Dominique and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I'm back with another video, and this is a video that I've been really excited to do, and basically I'm going to be talking about the top 5 things I've learned from Tony Robbins. And so for those who don't know, Tony Robbins is an iconic motivational speaker and life coach that has worked with some of our generation's greatest minds to not only revolutionize themselves, but revolutionize the world. His teachings consist of a combination with psychology, behavioral conditioning, and goal setting. So he uses his perspective in order to help people truly reach the highest version of themselves and live a life that they are proud of. And so I was first introduced to Tony Robbins in the year of 2020. I received a scholarship in order to attend one of his online virtual personal development seminar. At the time, I didn't really understand what was the essence of my attendance to the seminar, but after that experience, I was completely changed. And my mom always talks about how she's noticed that change in me from who I was before I attended and who I was after. And so I think that Tony Robbins has had a great impact on my life, and that's why I'm making this video to share with you the top 5 lessons that I've learned from him and how they impact me today. And so to start off this video, the first lesson that I want to talk about is that problems need energy to survive. First, before we dive in, and so first, I think it's important that we discuss what the definition of a problem is. And so a problem is a perplexing situation, question, or obstacle that causes difficulty or doubt. And so as we all know, everybody has different problems in their life. People are served with very difficult problems, some are served with some not so difficult problems, but we all endure them on a day-to-day basis. But what is so interesting about a problem is that even though they might seem like the end of the world, the amount of power that they have in our lives is based off the energy and attention that we give to them. And so when Tony discusses that problems need energy to survive, he's discussing on how when you give a problem more emotional, he's discussing about when you give a problem more attention and you allow it to occupy more of an emotional bandwidth, the larger it grows and the more dominance it has over your well-being. So these problems persist because they consume this emotional and mental bandwidth within our lives. And so in order to minimize the amount of problems that we have in our life, we need to consciously redirect our resources towards finding a solution. So in order to help minimize a problem, we need to constantly redirect our resources towards finding a solution and depleting the amount of energy that we give into a problem. Because once we start depleting the energy from the problem won't seem as significant in our lives. Because at the end of the day, problems need fuel in order to survive. And so when you channel your efforts towards actionable steps, that will help you progress towards a solution, this robs the problem of the energy that it needs to grow. And so in order to do this, there are a couple steps that you can take in order to. And so the second lesson that I wanted to talk about that I learned from Tony Robbins is the difference between doing things to respond to moments and acting in a state of consciousness. So oftentimes when we as humans react to specific moments, this is usually a reaction that is fueled by our emotions. And a lot of the times our emotions can act as to operate in ways that don't necessarily allow with our true intention. Reactions are usually an unconscious and survival-oriented reflex that is usually driven by the primitive brain. And it happens so quickly that we don't really consider what the long-term effects may be. While in contrast, when we operate in a state of consciousness, we are in a deliberate awareness that creates a gap between the stimulus and our actions. And so it allows us to have a more of a thoughtful response rather than simply just reacting. So that's why it's so important to operate in a state of consciousness, because these actions are ones that more align with your values and what you want to give to the world. And so the 3 steps that I recommend taking when wanting to act in a state of consciousness is being able to recognize what you're feeling and the emotions that are stirring in you. Be able to consider what matters most to you, what your wants are, your values, your goals, and then act in a way that is in alignment with all of those things. Because once you're operating in this way, you are operating the truest version of you. When we allow immediate impulses to take over our lives, this causes our brain to trigger the fight or flight response. And so these fight or flight mechanisms are often fueled by emotion or our past triggers and can oftentimes cause us to behave in ways that we will more than likely regret. So one thing that I think is super cool is that Tony Robbins talks about the levels of consciousness. So the first level is egocentric. It's basically when you're focusing entirely on just yourself. Everything that you do is just in terms of you, and it's not really acknowledging the people that are also in your life. And Tony Robbins notes that living in this state can often lead to a lot of loneliness and isolation. And so we can go down to the next level, which is the ethnocentric. And this is basically when you operate in a way that expands care to a specific group, family, or a tribe that you're associated with. And while this is an improvement as you're not only focusing on yourself, this can also result in conflicts with people that are outside of this specific group that you have defined. And we can talk a little bit more about the next level, which is the world-centric level. And this is when you're able to use your consciousness and extend your awareness and care to humanity as a whole, and even people that you've never really met before in your entire life. And so this is a much more humanity-based level of consciousness. Then the last level of consciousness, which I feel is the most valuable one, is the spirit-centric level. And this is basically everything. It's the highest level of consciousness, and it's characterized mostly by deep emotional connection and care for all living things and the environment. So this level of consciousness is when you're able to think about and prioritize things that are just beyond you. It's when you're able to reach a state of consciousness where you're able to find an equilibrium between focusing on what you need, but then also being able to acknowledge and put attention into the needs of others. And so yes, it's so important to be able to operate in a state of consciousness that deeply aligns with who you are and not allowing your fight or flight or any impulses to dictate how you want to operate as a human being. And so the third very important lesson that I learned from Tony Robbins is that at the end of the day, comparison is a thief of joy. When we live a life where we're so focused on what other people are doing, it takes away from what we ourselves are doing or could be doing. And I feel like in today's day and age, especially, social media has allowed us to become a lot more integrated into other people's lives. And we're able to see what a lot of people are doing at any second of the day. And this often causes us to compare what our lives are like to what they're doing. But this creates such a false image because social media is just a highlight reel of other people's lives. Some people do enjoy sharing the real and the not so pretty sides of their life, but other people show the more glamorous sides in order to create this image of themselves for the world. So when you live a life where you take your life and compare it to others, this can ultimately cause a lot of disappointment because a lot of people might be hiding away the things that they don't want other people to see. So if you do have a tendency of comparing yourself, redirect this comparison to comparing your current life to what your future life would be like, and compare yourself to the next level of you. Because when you measure your milestones against others, this will erode your happiness. And so in order to maintain this happiness, you should navigate with the mentality that the only person that you should be trying to outdo isn't other people, but it's who you were yesterday. Every single day you should take steps that will help you become better than who you were the day before. And then once you're able to navigate every single day with this mentality, you're going to be working towards reaching the highest version of yourself. And so don't focus your growth on external benchmarks, because this is going to make the satisfaction that you have with your life a moving target, and it's going to be really hard to hit the bullseye. Focus on what you have in your life, focus on your reality, and be grateful for that reality. Practice gratitude and understand that everything in your life is happening for a reason. The way that I practice this personally is I like to maintain a gratitude journal. And so this is the gratitude journal that my mom gave me a little while ago. And basically this book is full of pages where I just am being grateful for all of the things I have in my life. And these can be things that are super small, like, oh, the tea I had this morning, or things that could be a little bit more bigger, like, oh, I'm so grateful for the opportunity that I have to study what I'm studying. And so it's so important to be able to be grateful for every single aspect of our lives. And so a lot of the time I'm like, oh, I'm so grateful that I didn't trip on the way to school today. I'm so grateful that I didn't lose my shoes when I thought I had lost them. It's like being able to recognize the little joys in our life and living with the mentality that every single thing that we experience in our lives is a blessing. And just to be grateful for the process of life that you're living, because at the end of the day, everybody's journey through life is completely different. There's no specific universal way to live life. So why compare your life to somebody else's when it's inevitable that all of our lives are going to be different? Be grateful for the life that you get to live and all the different experiences you get to have, because there's always going to be such beauty in that. And so the fourth lesson that I will be talking about is it's hard to change you, but it's easy to change a pattern. We as human beings, we all have our own core identity. And if there's ever any moment where you feel frustrated with who you are as a person, it's not possible to change who you are at your core. But what you can do is change the patterns and the habits that no longer allow with who you feel at your core. So what I mean by this is that every single one of us has the power to reshape the outcomes that we have in our life, to change the automatic behaviors that we have in our lives that no longer align with who we want to be. And the way that we can do this is by taking actionable steps to change the automatic behaviors that no longer align with us. Because trying to overhaul our entire personality or change our identity overnight is exhausting, and it's completely unrealistic. But by breaking down your life into smaller and more actionable habits allows you to rewire your brain with minimal friction. And by focusing on these tiny and more manageable adjustments, you're going to be able to create a lasting momentum without really having to rely on sheer willpower. It's so important to be able to differentiate your identity versus a system. What do I mean by this? It's that you don't need to change who you are, you just need to change what you do. And so our identity is who we are, but the systems that we have in our life define what we do as people. And so if there's a specific system that is not working, you have the power to take the steps to change that. Just by focusing on improving yourself 1% a day, you're going to be able to change your life completely. Because at the end of the day, we define who we are, and we are the ones that take the steps to live that definition. And so the fifth and final lesson that I'm going to be talking about today is trading fear for faith. What do I mean by this? Well, basically, it's when you shift your focus from the anxiety of what might happen to trusting that there's already a higher plan already in place. I know that for me personally, I have a very big imagination. I'm always imagining different scenarios of what might happen. And so if you're also able to vividly imagine the unseen and worst case scenarios of various situations, you can just as easily use that same mental energy that we discussed earlier in this video to imagine positive outcomes that could happen in our lives. And so the way you can do this is by identifying the root. So you can identify exactly what it is that you're afraid of, whether this could be fear of failure, fear of the unknown, fear of the lack of control. Instead of repeating phrases like, oh, what if I fail? You can replace them with statements of anticipation, of excitement, like, oh, what if it works out? What if everything that I was afraid of doesn't happen? Once you stop focusing on these what ifs that are holding you back, you're able to live a much more optimistic and positive life. For me, I feel that I'm a very optimistic person because even through all the failures I've had in life, even through my lowest of low points, all of these moments have led me to who I am today, and I'm very happy with the kind of person I am and all the experiences I've been able to have, because all these experiences have each taught me a lesson that I hold with me every single day of my life. So I challenge you to look at your life when things felt completely impossible, but you ultimately made it through, and use these moments as evidence to trust the future and trust yourself to be able to navigate any of the lows. Trust yourself to ground your mind during those most turbulent moments. It's so important to remember that faith isn't the absence of fear, but it's being able to move forward in spite of it. And so do the next right thing and just have faith that you are going to be led onto the correct path. Promote more of an optimistic mindset over the pessimistic ones, because the pessimism isn't going to allow us to achieve the highest version of ourselves. So yes, those are the 5 lessons that I've been able to learn as I've been able to watch and listen to Tony Robbins' speeches and his conversation that he has with day-to-day people. Personally, I find his content so inspiring, and if you are wanting to learn more about it, I definitely recommend searching up his seminars and learning a little bit more about his journey and all the things he has to say. So I hope you guys all enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions or if you want to talk a little bit more about what I talked about, leave a comment, because I love to learn about all these new different ideas. And yes, I hope you guys all enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!